Okay, welcome everyone to our discussion of darkei hatalmud. We're in the penultimate chapter, and the saintly Rabbi Yitzchak is here telling us the basic words of Masa Matan, of the debate. What goes on between the proponent of an idea and the opponent? When there's an argument in the Gemara, what moves does the proponent have to do? What moves does the opponent do? What moves does the proponent have to do in result of an attack, let's say, by the opponent? And then what the opponent has to do when that attack has been defended, and how he has to now re-attack. And this give and take, an argumentation that goes on between one person who's proposing an idea or defending an idea and the other one's attacking an idea, has rules. Okay, there's certain scenarios that go on which describe each one of these concepts. So the Yitzchak has gone through Shas, and he's now going to define these basic moves. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry for those interruptions. Okay. So we're up to here. So the next term that he's going to do, is called Hoguf Akasha. Okay. What does that mean? So he explains like this: Hu kashiyesh kusha b'marma atzmo beirosho l'sofa ou le'ibcha. A Hoguf Akasha is an internal contradiction in the statement. The beginning of the statement contradicts the end, or the end contradicts the beginning. This internal contradiction is the key word here is Hoguf Akasha. Let's look at a live example. The Gemara again in Baba Kama says the following: Lema kahani tanai. Maybe this is a machlokus of the following tanai. Okay, Hamotzi tivno v'kasho l'reshusa rabin lizvolim v'huzak behem echad. Acher, I'm sorry. A person takes out a straw into reshusa rabin in order to make fertilizer. Okay. In other words, what you do is you want to mix the straw and the hay together with the mud and let it rot. And when it rots and starts to decay, it becomes a very good fertilizer for your plant. But instead of doing it in your own domain, you decide that you're going to do it in the public domain. And as a result, what happens? And someone trips and falls on the color that you made, and he hurts himself. So what's the din? The din is chayav benesko. The person who made this fertilizer outside in the public domain has to pay for the damage of the person who was damaged. Not only that, that's the first thing. V'kol hakodem behen zocha. It says that anyone who comes and takes away this color first is merited to have it. In other words, anyone, you see someone doing this in Rishus Rabbim, all you have to do is just pick up the fertilizer and just take it away, and it's yours. And not only, but then it says here, the osri mishum gezel. But then it says it's forbidden, if we're talking about the same subject, it's forbidden to take it because of stealing. So that's what we want to say is a Hoguf Akasha. On one hand, you say that I can take it. The other hand, it says, no, you can't steal it. So that's a contradiction. It's a Hoguf Akasha. Okay, just to be complete, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, Kol HaMekalkalim B'Rishus Rabin V'Heziku Chayiv V'Shalem V'Kol HaKodem Mehem Zocha U'Mutrin Shum Gezel. That's even a worse contradiction. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, anyone who makes a stumbling block in the public domain and damages someone, so he has to pay. That's number one. Anyone that wants can take it away. And it's mutter mishum gezel. And you can take it and it won't be called gezel. So the Gemara says like this: Hol gufa kasha. In the ratio. In the ratio, you said, anyone who takes it, it's theirs. And then you turned around and you said, Vahadikamas from Mishum Gezel. And if he takes it, he's a thief. So what do you, it's a contradiction. That statement, the first statement there, is a internal contradiction. You can't tell me that that I can take it. On the other hand, it's also Mishum Gezel. Okay? So that's the key word that we use. Hogufa kasha, it itself is contradictory when we see that there is a internal contradiction statement being made. Okay? Now, these, I'm going to go through them, and B'ez Hashem, next week I'm going to bring some examples, okay? I just push it, not having time to do it this week. But let's just go through a few of them and see at least what the explanation is, and we'll give the examples next week. And again, what I try to do is, in all these pronouns of lo, of him, and against him, so I try to, here in English, write who's the him, because we always have a dynamic between the person who's proposing the idea and the person who is opposing the idea. So you have to know who's on which side in order to understand the blows being offered by one to the other. Okay, so here's akati kasha. When is this key word akati kasha? When is it used? He kasher ateretz shemitaretz enu masmik. So already we're talking about the second level. There was a proponent said a statement. There was an opponent that raised the difficulty. And now the original proponent defended himself with a teretz. But this teretz is not sufficient. So the opponent will come back and say, your teretz is not sufficient because it's still, the original kasha exists. Akati kasha, it still exists. You haven't solved anything. And that's the move of the proponent in level 2. Okay. The next one is called mine ube, which is taking the proof that the defender or the proponent gives and turning it around on it. Hu kasher hamama shemevi la'ozro lo, when the proponent brings a statement to help him, omed kenegdo, the proponent turns that very statement around and uses it as an argument against him. The yomrulo, the opponent will say, Memakam Shabata, from that very place that you brought your proof, I am now going to destroy your argument. Or Adarada, Ibcha Mistabra, or that proof that you brought is just it's reasonable to say just the opposite of what you're saying from that proof. Or Hi Hanasenis, or the proof that you brought is going to be the proof to my side. All these lashonos, Minei Ubei, Makom Shabata, Adaraba, Ibku Mestavra, Hi Hanasenis, they all really have the same intention. V'him yesh hebel b'neim. There are slight differences when and how they're used, and maybe it's a conference not get involved in them. But the gadol in the basis is taking a person's argument and turning it against them. Okay, and as I said, Blina, I will next week give some live examples. We'll just go through what he says. Okay, here's a kol shekain shehosafta. All the more so that you added what you said. Okay. So now we're not saying that that your teretz didn't solve anything. We're saying, no, your teretz now made your position even worse. So we're adding another level of attack. Okay, so we're going to have to show why do we have to know this consciously, because then we're going to have to spell out when we have in the argument how this opponent is now going to show that this argument now is even more of a difficulty. Okay, so he says like this: Who keshebo the proponent comes to the level 1. Actually, there's a proponent. He proposed something. The question is how we're going to talk about level 1, level 2. That's an interesting way. We're going to have to divide that up. But whatever it is, the proponent makes his proposition. The opponent attacks him. And now in round 3, let's say, the proponent is going to defend himself with a teretz. Round 4 may also dava shioma l'terutzo, from that very defense that the proponent used, the opponent now is going to turn around and nosaf kusha osafat al masha haya b'tchila. And he's going to say, now that you said that, you're going to be even more problems because new difficulties will arise. No safakusha osafat al masha haya b'tchila. It's bad enough that you gave me that your position was weak, but this teretz now is going to make your position even weaker, because it's going to add more difficulties. Kol shekain shesaf. Okay, let's look at the next one. I would like to develop with you a language of which round we're in. That would be very interesting, because there's always the proponent, then there's the opponent who attacks, then there's the defense, and then there's the re-attack. So the question is, how would we like to label that? You know, those different blows in the argument. We have to think about that.
We probably have to study a bunch of examples to really first make sure there's a pattern.
Yeah.
And what the pattern is.
Well, there always is. I mean, the question is, how do you how would we label that? You know, I mean, there's always, you start off with a proposition, or else nothing happens, right? We're always starting with a proposition. So now the next thing that's done, stage number 2, is that someone opposes that proposition, right? Which is the attack stage, to stage number 1. Now, once that the person who was attacked has to defend himself, right? So stage number 3 has to defend himself against the attack. Now, stage number 4 is where the opponent comes back again. He says your defense is either no defense, or your defense brings new problems up. Okay, that's like stage number 4. And then stage number 5 is that he has to now patch up or defend from that new attack. Okay, and this can go on. I mean, those of us that learn Gemara, this can go on for pages of Gemara. So, but this is what goes on, because again, as the Ramchal explained, it's only through this honest give and take of this Milchamas Hashem, really, this tremendous war that the truth comes out. Rabbi Goldsmith said, truth has no friends. Truth is truth, and but it can't be understood on the first level, because many things that sound good on introspection, on retrospect, we see that there's many problems with it. So when a person's really interested in understanding the truth of something, he goes over things many times, and then he has to be responsible for explaining all the difficulties that might arise with that mahalach, with that way of handling it. And that's really what the Gemara is doing. The Gemara is just a battling of the truth of what Hashem says. Okay, and everyone, as he said in Derek Tefunos, whether it's the proponent, the opponent, only cares about truth. No one's trying to hide things or to get away with anything. Everyone's really straight and upfront. The only problem is that since we're dealing with subtle areas, there's going to be reinterpretations of Pesukim or Mishnayos or Memorim in order to explain the truth of the concept. Okay, because if it was totally clear, no one would have to say it. So anytime you have a position that's being taken in the Gemara, it's a position, which means it is not Peshita, as we learned in darkei Gemara. It means it has pluses and minuses, but it doesn't matter if things have pluses and minuses, because truth can have pluses and minuses, and words can have secondary meanings, and If it's true, it's like it says Hashem put his hand in Mitzrayim. So literally, Hashem has a hand. The truth is not that way. It's a mashal. It's a metaphor. It's an aphorism, as we say. I think it's called aphorism. Okay, it's using, as we learned in Sefer Melitza, a concept that we're going to borrow from human behavior and putting it on Hashem because it's the only language that we know. But the truth of a concept doesn't mean that it's always the simple thing of what it says. It doesn't mean it's simple. It could mean that it's talking about a metaphor or talking about a certain case. But the most important thing is that everybody's interested in that truth. So now we're trying to describe the various scenarios that go on between the proponent and the opponent. Okay, and as I said, we'll leave that alone to bring examples. Okay, let's look at this one. Balav hachi nami. I'd like to also give some sort of system to say, okay, this is level 1 is when the proponent proposes, and level 2 is the kasha, and level 3 is the teretz to the kasha, and level 4 is the kasha to that teretz, and so on. And it'd be interesting to me. Again, only for clarity, so that when we're watching the various stages and we know what is going on and what people are doing, and then we could say, wait a minute, if this is a culture against Yosafta, it must mean now consciously this is saying that a new problem is going to arise. So not only can we understand what's being said, but it will also telegraphs us to look at what should be next. If all of a sudden we see that it's not adding anything, so then all the Meforshim will start yelling and screaming because they're sensitive to these things. Okay.
Yeah, the best way would be to flow chart, and then to take a few different sugyas and apply it to the flow chart, and then identify all the different components and apply. And then we could say, okay, the lav hachinami never happens in a level 1; it's always in a level 2 or level 3, or it only happens in a level 3. Something like that.
Well, it could happen in a few levels too, but at least, okay, that's what we're going to do. That's the high idea of this visual logic that's a coining of the phrase that I did. Basically, by using this enter and tab business, what I'm trying to do is to show which stage of the argument we're in. So as I said, I've taught a lot of different people, but when you teach people who are new in Torah, or not even new, but it's very easy to get lost in a complex argument. So if you do this, then everybody at least knows what stage we're in, and it is not lost. Then the question is, is those stages with the stages, or how do we understand the switch from? But the whole idea is clarity here. Okay, so just this one last one, balav hachinami. Even without that, you have a difficulty. What does that mean? Hu kasher hamadaber masna eze tanai. The proponent makes a statement, and he says this statement exists within a certain condition. B'davarav or b'ininahu. When he's trying to, he either makes the statement or describes a situation, and he adds a certain condition. V'hu bilti mukhrach. And the proponent will tell him, wait a minute, this Tanai seems unnecessary. It's unnecessary. Meaning, even without that Tanai, you could still have the same din. Yeshiv lo chavaro belav hachinami. So the proponent, I should have written the proponent here. I do that. Why? Okay, this is live visual logic. Okay, so the proponent now so you have to always say who's the low here. Oops. The opponent. Oh boy, not working today. Don't know why. Okay, whatever it is. Here we have to write the word. The opponent now says to his friend, "Balav hachinami." Even without that condition, the law that you're stating is the law. So why did you add it? Okay. V'yesh li'ayin im oso tanai hu al tzad hayoter tov o im masnehu behechrach harekus. Well, we're going to have to discuss that. is this Tanai being added because it makes the argument better, or because there's no way out, there's no way to explain the situation without the Tanai. Okay, so we're going to have to find some live examples of this, and then go back and doing it. But okay, so the basic thing here is to identify the various moves in the Gemara. We said there's basically the opponent and there's the proponent and the opponent, and then at what level is this move being used? Okay, so basically there's always a proposition, there's always going to be what we call the memra, and in der Tfunos is always going to be on that memra a kasha, and the kasha has to have a teretz, and the teretz has to have a kasha on that kasha, and then has the teretz to that kasha, okay? And then each side will have to build up that logic tree, and then there'll be the holding of both the argumentation and a decision by the Gemara, which way do we go, okay? And that's called conscious thinking, and that's called decision making, and that's called weighing all the conditions. And when serious things happen, so people start thinking that way, and Talmidei Chachamim think that way all the time. So we're going to be Talmidei Chachamim. Okay, so we're leading in next week. I'm going to prepare the some live examples for us, so we can understand that. And Ad Kan this year on hatalmud. So we shall see you next week.